Fellas, you lit me up. In our bow-to-bow comparison between Pre-Astyanax, the Grandmaster bow, which you can get as an adept weapon, we compared it to another bow called Tyranny of Heaven. And many of you were upset with our consensus. So much so that we immediately decided to do a review of Tyranny of Heaven and essentially a complete breakdown of literally everything you guys said in that comment section. It appears that Tyranny of Heaven, even in 2024, has a hell of a cult. But honestly, guys, the more and more I play with this bow, I get it, dude. And you gotta understand, the last time I actually did an individual review of this bow was 5 years ago, going on 6. And there has been a lot of changes that have affected this bow, especially since it's become a craftable weapon. Now, there's a lot of contributing factors to why Tyranny of Heaven and pretty much every solar bow in the game is performing so well this season. We've got solar surges, we have a number of artifact mods that are extremely potent for solar, and what makes Tyranny so good here is that we actually have Riven's wishes right now, where upon getting tokens, you can then go and redeem those tokens for a number of rewards, including that of the last wish raid weapons. And yes, when you redeem them, they are red border weapons. If you haven't checked out our guide, feel free to do so. We'll link that down below in the description. Now keep in mind, you don't even need to own the Forsaken pack in order to obtain these weapons. So that is a big perk to these Riven's wishes. With that being said though, let's break down everything about this bow. What we overlooked, what many of you pointed out last week in our side-to-side comparison, and where this bow sits in its most lethal form. Now again, this is a lightweight bow, meaning they don't hit as hard as our precision bows, but of course they are faster on the draw. They of course give you that handling buff, and Bungie has actually given out a number of buffs to lightweight bows to make them feel better. Most notably, the hit scan buff, essentially increasing the projectile speed as much as they possibly can to make them feel as instant and as good as precision bows feel. Now trait-wise, in our third column, we have moving targets, wellspring, archer's tempo, pugilist, explosive head, dragonfly, and successful warm-up. Now the top 2 perks we originally chose were Archer's Tempo and Dragonfly. But one perk we actually left off in our comparison, as many of you pointed out, is Explosive Head. I want to actually start here. This perk is essentially the equivalent to Explosive Payload that is found on many other weapons. But on bows it reads that arrows explode after a short delay. And how this works is that our damage gets split in half, with an increase in damage for PvE on the explosive part of the shot. Now on a base Tyranny of Heaven versus Carl, we're doing 7,310 damage to the body and 11,682 to the head. Now with Explosive Head equipped, we're doing 8,372 damage in total with this split right here to the body, and 12,779 damage in total to the head. Again, it's that 4,718 damage that is that explosive damage. Now for the enhanced version of Explosive Head, this passively gives us +5 to our accuracy stats. One of the most common complaints about lightweight bows is they feel inaccurate, and this is a way we can bump that stat up just slightly more. Now many of you pointed out that this was the perk. This was it. This was the one we missed. And yes, it is good. You're roughly trading 15% extra body shot damage and roughly 10% extra crit damage over base Tyranny. Not that I don't like Archer's Tempo or even Dragonfly with that explosion damage on precision kills, but on a damage versus damage comparison, yes, Explosive Head is giving us more damage. Now, Archer's Tempo was what we originally chose as our god rope for Tyranny of Heaven, considering what I'm trying to lean into when using Tyranny is just purely to pump out as many arrows as possible. And we covered this pretty in depth in our last video. On Tyranny, at 500 draw speed, it takes approximately 29 frames to reach that full draw. And with Archer's Tempo, this drops us down to 22 frames. This is around a 25% decrease in our draw time for 3 seconds. And with our enhanced version of this perk, that buff lasts for 4 seconds. And then we have Dragonfly, where precision final blows creates an elemental damage explosion. Now in our testing last video, we saw at Carl that the explosive damage from Dragonfly was dealing 10,577 damage, which is pretty good. It also works with incandescent, meaning you get 2 explosions on a single precision kill, which would deal 12,285 total damage here at Carl. Now, as for the enhanced version of Dragonfly, this passively gives us +5 reload speed, which is nice. That allows us to knock our arrow even quicker. Again, nothing drastic, but a nice stat bump. Now, another interesting thing to note that we didn't realize last time is that Dragonfly's explosion, if it gets a kill, can actually reproc incandescent. Many of you pointed this out, hence why we're making this video. But guys, if Dragonfly lands that explosion kill, it will reproc incandescent, further spreading that scorch to other surrounding targets. The perk is fun, guys, especially in combination with incandescent. We're going to talk about that a bit more here shortly. But I do want to mention, like I mentioned in our last review, is that Dragonfly for me does begin to fall off in more difficult activities, most notably in Grandmaster Nightfalls. However, for anything at level or even slightly higher. I'll take Dragonfly all day long. Now moving on to our fourth column. We went over these perks already, but we'll go over them again. We've got Golden Tricorn, Snapshot, Collective Action, Swashbuckler, Adagio, One for All, and Incandescent. Guys, Incandescent is still our top pick. We're defeating a target, spreads Scorch to those nearby. Kills will put out this small explosion that spreads Scorch to other targets. It synergizes with Solar 3.0. It's been a top tier perk for mini bows over many seasons. Now some notes here about Incandescent here for Tyranny. At base, it applies 30 Scorch stacks. With Ember of Ashes, it's 40. And with the enhanced version, this applies 5 more Scorch stacks with Ember of Ashes. This will net us a total of 45 Scorch stacks. Now I know we have other options, things like Collective Action for that 20% buff for 7 seconds. You've got Golden Tricorn, which you can build into. You've got One for All, which I don't really care for on a bow, but maybe if you're synergizing it with Dragonfly, okay then, you might have a play here. We also have Swashbuckler, which gives us that 33% damage buff at ×5. And if you were to pair this with Radiance, yes, all these buffs combined will allow Tyranny to get that one-shot kill on all resilience levels inside of PvP. Now with all that being said, and most notably, with all of your comments being read, what is the God roll for Tyranny of Heaven? I think for most players, and this again is just my opinion, Polymer String, Straight Fletching or Compact Arrow Shaft, a Draw Time Masterwork, and Enhanced Incandescent plus Enhanced Dragonfly. Guys, you opened my eyes. I've changed my ways. Originally, I was just being a normal bow user, relying on Archer's Tempo, thinking that was the way to go. And here's really the problem. This season, we have Rays of Precision. And that perk right there is making every solar bow, and every solar weapon for that matter, phenomenal by giving us those ignitions when landing those precision kills while we are Radiant. And again, it's these combination of artifact perks that are feeding us Radiant within 2 precision shots from our bow. And half the time, when using Tyranny, I thought to myself, why would I need Dragonfly when I have Rays of Precision? But as so many of you pointed out, guys, that's only for this season. And even though, yes, there is some conflict here between Rays of Precision and Dragonfly, sometimes that explosion would get to the enemy before it can trigger that ignition, which is annoying. But as many of you pointed out, this is the God roll, and it will continue to be the God roll even after this season. Now, inside of Grandmasters, I would still consider something like Enhanced Explosive Head, as well as Enhanced Incandescent. We found against red bar enemies, you can get that one shot off with Explosive Head, Minor Spec, plus Radiance. Now, I do want to point out that I still do like Archer's Tempo. It's still a good pick. I like the faster draw time. I like bowing things back to back over and over. But, as many of you pointed out, Explosive Head is the way to go for in-game content. And that's what's so great about Tyranny of Heaven, is that it is a craftable weapon. Unlike Pre-Astyanax, which really locks us into a specific role as it's a drop, Tyranny says, hey, depending on the content you're going in, you can change me. You can mold me however you wish. And that's a beautiful thing about this bow. There's so many things contributing to bows this season, guys. From Unstoppable Bow being present to allow us to overcharge our weapons, to the fact that this is a solar bow and it's going to take advantage of Solar Surge. And we have mods like Flint Striker, which gives our solar weapons Radiance. And for bows, it's so easy. 2 precision hits to proc it. You've got Kindling Trigger, allowing our weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. And on top of that, considering we just went over Enhanced Incandescent, Enhanced Dragonfly, and the synergy between those two and the spreading of Scorch, it synergizes beautifully here with everything else. My only complaint is sometimes there's some funky stuff with Rays of Precision and the ignition damage, but regardless, guys, it still does great. Now, with all that being said, what are the best exotics to work with here if you're trying to fully take advantage of Tyranny? Now, guys, you can do a lot of different things. You can go Celestial Nighthawk with Hunters as hitting crits, which you're going to be pretty much doing at all times with your bow. Upon getting those final blows will reduce your super cooldown. For my Titans, you've got things like Path of Burning Steps or even Pyrogale Gauntlets, which I know don't really have synergy, but dude, who doesn't like this hammer wave? The other exotic is Dawn Chorus, and this was actually nice here. It increases the damage of our Scorch by 200%. This is a phenomenal exotic this season, considering everything that's feeding into solar, and if you take advantage of a weapon with Incandescent, it's beautiful. Versus Carl, at base, the explosion damage was 1,708, with Incandescent ticking for 738. Now again, all of this is being done with Ember of Ashes. With Dawn Chorus, this increased our explosion damage to 5,123, and our burn tick damage, to get this, guys, 2,214. Now keep in mind, this does not increase our Scorch stacks itself. This is just the Scorch damage. But if there's anything to take away from this video, if you're not a bow fan, okay, fine, but use Dawn Chorus. So that's it, guys. That's all we got. We wanted to return to this weapon, look at it one more time. You pointed it out that Tyranny of Heaven was way better than what we gave it credit for. At the end of the day, I was blinded by my love for Pre-Astyanax. And honestly, if you ask me now, guys, I still don't know which bow is the best. Personally, I still like Pre-Astyanax, like a lot. It's a phenomenal bow, but I get why so many people like Tyranny. So guys, whether you're doing the Last Wish raid, farming for this weapon, or taking advantage of Riven's wishes, Tyranny is a phenomenal bow to have, especially for this season. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.